class, welcome to the last section of microbial antagonism. So just to review quickly, microbial antagonism are the flora, the normal biota that's found in your body. Other words that they use are normal biota, indigenous biota, normal microbiota, and commensals. So these are normal biota in our body that take up space and protect us from pathogens just from being there, although sometimes they will put off lipids and acids to discourage or kill the competitors around them. So these are not pathogenic biota. Those are ones that we get occasionally that can cause us trouble. Sometimes they're normal as well, but the word pathogenic biota is not part of our normal resident biota. Okay, so we have the infectious dose. The infectious dose, it varies greatly. It's just the minimum amount of microbes that would be in the inoculating dose. What is the inoculating dose? That is enough to stimulate the immune response and to produce antibodies. So some diseases that we know about, plague, anthrax, they have a very low inoculating dose, like 10 organisms. Most things it's much higher than that. And part of the reason for that is immediately when the inoculation occurs, the white blood cells will quickly try to destroy the invaders by phagocytosis. So things like tuberculosis has a low inoculating dose. They can avoid phagocytosis. They can live in the macrophages. They will have a lower inoculating dose. So here's a picture of the macrophage. That's called the big eater. And then the neutrophil. Neutrophil is actually the first one on the scene because they're already in the blood. The macrophages take a little while because remember the monocytes are in the blood. They have to turn into macrophages and the tissues transform themselves. These ones can attack right away, but this problem with neutrophils is they're so tiny they just like engulf one bacteria and it kind of does them in. They're done. But there's a lot of them and they are in the blood and they're usually first one on the spot. Okay, so let's look at what is an infection. Infection just means that the pathogens enter and multiply in body tissues. So you have to have enough of whatever it is, and it's specific per pathogen for that to happen. And then we also here would like to go over the prefix emia, or the suffix rather. The suffix emia, that means blood. So that means the pathogens, if we have septicemia, that means the pathogens are growing and flourishing in the blood. And usually that is very bad. So let's go over some of the infectious disease stages that we need to know and be aware of. So the first one is the incubation period. This is when we first have had our infectious dose, the organisms have entered and they're multiplying. They're starting off low numbers, their numbers are rising, and so there's no symptoms yet. The pathogen is just entered and it's just multiplying. Then we have the prodromal stage. This is when you get the vague early symptoms. So the amount of pathogen is rising in the body and you have early symptoms like you don't really know what you have, but you feel a little weird, fatigue, you're tired. You just feel off, but you're not really sure if you're sick or not, but you're not feeling yourself. Then we have the acute stage. This is very definite. The pathogen is at its peak, and we are seeing specific signs and symptoms that go along with that particular disease we had, like a sore throat or a cough. And so that is the acute stage. And then we have the convalescent stage. The convalescent stage is when the organism is starting to go down, the immune system is doing its job, and the patient is starting to get and feel better, convalescent stage. So we have signs and symptoms that are specific to the acute stage. So what's the difference between a sign and a symptom? So a sign is objective, if you remember from biology, the difference between objective and subjective. Objective means that the nurse takes your temperature and like, oh, you have an elevated temperature, or they observe you coughing and listen to the cough. That is called a sign. A symptom is subjective. It's something the patient feels like, I feel nauseous, blah, blah, blah. Usually there's, weight to it, of course, but it's something the patient feels. So if their subjective senses aren't good or the disease isn't bad enough, they're never going to go in and have someone to look at their signs. So that's an infection that went unnoticed. So we call that an asymptomatic infection. So some people have bigger pain tolerance than others, but some things that are so bad you are going to go in and then we will see the signs and symptoms. So then we go through all this. Then we have reservoir. What's a reservoir? It's, well, in geology terms, it's a place where water is stored. But in here, it's a natural habitat of the pathogen, what we can get the pathogen from. So there are different types of reservoirs. For example, humans, animals. If we get the infection from an animal, it's called a zoonotic infection. Make sure you know that, zoonotic infection. Then soil, you can get some things from the soil. For example, plague. Anthrax, although it's kind of nodules on the plants that are in the soil. Water is a huge reservoir for pathogens as well as a reservoir of water. So we have all those things, and that is the end of microbial antagonism, and I will see you next week.